start today's lesson. We're going to continue on animation keyframing, and we're also going to do interpolation, which basically controls the object's movement. By default, you get the Bezier curve interpolation on any 3D major programs. That's what they default to. The interpolation simply means what if you don't want your object to travel from left to right with some dampening, where it slows to it's at the beginning of its movement, it slows down, and when it ends, it also slows down, right? So that's basically, one of the principles of animation, where you have an ease in and ease out, or slow in and slow out. For example, let's say you don't want that. You want something mechanical, where you want it, linear in its movement. Then you won't be able to do that type of animation just by using the default values of Bezier interpolation. So that's what we're going to do. We're also going to learn how to change the function curve in order to change the behavior of the movement to make it slower or faster. Okay. So first things first, let me explain to you the setup that we have. So all I have is 3 donuts on a plane, looking at it from the top. Okay, put 2 area lights right here so you can see better, basically. All right, so let's start right here. First things first is that all these objects would have some values in them. Okay, kind of like a value whenever you kind of first position them, like so. So in order to kind of reset that, so yours will have some values right here, kind of very similar to what I have here. This one I already reset, so we have to kind of do some maintenance here. Pretend you got yours will have values in here if you try to replicate this lesson. So in order to get all those back to 0, you got to go to Object, Apply, and then look, all transform to deltas, just so that we get everything back to kind of 0. Okay, and then we can just kind of, if we scoot this over to the right, we could actually see value right there. We could easily just copy it to the other one so they all have the same value. So resetting, applying, transform to deltas would actually do that. Okay, it will give you fresh value. All right, so we're going to have to animate this. Another thing we're going to learn today is we're keyframing using an individual keyframe, single keyframe. Okay, as opposed to insert keyframes right there. When you do insert keyframes, you get all XYZ keyframe. Okay, if I go here to my timeline, now my dope sheet, it tells you we're only doing X. So how come we're getting values for Y? Well, that's for when you set up your animation, where you want all keyframes to all possible, you want data on all possible keyframe, is you can then don't have to create them, because you're going to go back and then add values to those, or a way to kind of control your animation. But in our case, we only want X movement. All right, so we're not going to do that. I'm going to click undo, and I'm going to turn on screencast, by the way, so you can see all my keyboard shortcuts when I do those. Okay, so I'm going to click undo, Command Z. All right, so instead of that, I'm just going to do right click and then insert single keyframe. So you can see only X, where I right click, gets that keyframe right here. If I look here in my object transform, I'm not getting static keyframes for Y and Z, which we don't need. Okay, like I said, later on you would want that in your animation. But for now, we're kind of simplifying it. Okay, so I'm going to click undo again to make sure that we're starting from scratch. Okay, so one way to do this is to right click here, or you can also do keyboard shortcut I, it's an ice cream, and then you can do location. However, when you do this, you get all 3 values as well. So let's not do that. Okay, we're just going to right click the value. So we have 4 steps in animation. The first step is to select the object you want to animate. Second step is you position the time. Third step is to transform it, whether you move it or not, it's a transform. And then step 4 is to keyframe your object. Okay, so what we have here is I have 50 frames on my timeline, so I changed 250 to 50. So that means when we play this, it will play close to 2 seconds, 2 seconds and 2 frames extra. And then we'll just loop so we can see our animation. Okay, so let's start with the first one, the red one. I'm also going to switch to the look dev right here, so it kind of mimics with the final output over there. So I'm going to start with the red one. Okay, I'm going to rename this torus to red, this one to green, just so that we start naming our stuff. And don't forget to always save your scene. You can also change Blender to autosave. You can go change that to your preferences. I'm going to change that to blue. So we're going to start with the red one. Okay. First step, select the object you want to animate. It's selected. Second step, position your timeline. I want this to be on frame 1. Okay. Step 3, transform your object. Yeah, it's transformed. It's already in position. This is where I want it to start. And then step 4, you need to keyframe. So I'm going to right click X. So we just want this red arrow, which is the X, to be animated. So I'm just going to right click here under location and insert single keyframe. Okay, so you can see it animated it. Just to transform, you might say, hey, that didn't do anything. Well, we animated it to stay in place. That is also animation. It doesn't have to move in order for it to count as an animation. So it has a starting position. Okay, so the next step is you redo the 4 steps basically. So select the object you want to animate. I've still got it selected. Step number 2 is position the time. So we want 24 frames, 1 second worth of animation to move this object from here to here. So third step is to transform the object. So when I grab this to the right, it gives me value right there. So I'm just going to type in 13 just to be like a whole number. You know, we can easily copy 13 and move it here to the right. As you can see, we are now keyframing on frame 24. That's the third step. Fourth step is to right click, insert keyframe, and we got our animation here. So if I go to the beginning right here on 1 and then play this, there you go. There's our animation. Super boring, but that's what we're learning right now. Okay, so I'm going to stop the animation. I'm going to redo the exact same thing for the green donut and the blue donut. So I'm going to select the green donut. All right, so what I want to do with this is keyframe it at this position. So let me just slowly repeat the 4 steps again. Select. First step is to select the object you want to animate. There it is, selected. Step number 2, position the time where you want to start your animation. Okay, so positioning the time, simply dragging our playhead on the timeline here. That will be frame 1. Okay. Step 3 is to transform it. Transforming it is to actually physically XYZ using move, rotate, and scale. That's what transform means. Okay. You can also drag this to the right if you want to. Okay. It will, you know, register value. But what we want is keyframe it at the beginning where it's at right here. So step number 3 is to transform. We're just not moving it, but that counts as a transform. And step number 4 is to keyframe it. So along the X, which is the red, we just want it to go to the right. If you want it to go here, then that means you're animating Y, right? So we want it on the X. So I'm going to right click here, insert single keyframe, and that's registered right there. We'll repeat the process. Step 1, select. Step 2, position the time, which is 24. Step 3, we want to move it. So I'm going to grab the X axis only, which is the red one. Move it over here. Not as precise as that one, but I can just type in my value right here to 13. Okay, so it's exactly the same as this. Then right click, insert keyframe. Probably wondering, is there a way to kind of copy and paste this information to the other one? Yes, there's all sorts of ways to animate and to repeat the process by copying the same value. Okay, but what we're doing right now is just to kind of simplify things for us. We're doing something kind of redundant. It's for learning purpose. Okay, so that one's done. I got 2 keyframes on both, so let's play the animation so you can see. Exact same replica. They move exactly the same. Okay, I'm going to stop this one. I'm going to finish our animation with our third object. Okay, so our third object right now, the cursor is still right here. It's not in the center, so I have to do an object, apply, and then reset all transform to deltas. Oh, I didn't do it. Let's see here. Maybe I changed my, let me set my origin to geometry. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to go and apply location to deltas. All right, so that zeroes it in right here because I forgot to set the origin to that one. Okay, so it's 0 right at the center. So we're just going to start from scratch. Select the object right there, position the time, transform the object, which is already transformed. location up here, X, single keyframe. Okay. Repeat the process, select, move the time to 24, transform the object, or type in 13 here. Right click it, insert keyframe, and now we have all three objects animated going from left to right. Okay, so this is what we did with the last class when you guys animated the donut, but they just go from the top to the bottom. This one's just left to right. Really no difference. Okay, now let's explore our interpolation. Okay, so I'm going to stop the playback here. Don't forget to save if you're not in autosave format. Okay, because if you crash, you start from the start. Okay, so we're looking at everything in the animation tab here, and what we see right now is a dope sheet. Okay, we are looking at the dope sheet, and we can change what we see here into another window. So sometimes you would want to keep your dope sheet, and then here you want to change this to something else because we're kind of redundant, right? We have kind of two screens here that we're working on, but I'll just teach you how to kind of jump through different windows here. So right here, the very upper left corner of any window in Blender, you will see this down arrow where you can change your window to whatever it is that you want. Okay, so I can make this the shader editor. I can make this into the image editor. So you don't have to go to the tabs right here to go to specific window. You can actually force all those tabs to be whatever it is you want. Okay, so the default was the dope sheet. Dope sheet's what we're, it's our timeline and animation. Okay, and what we want to see is our graph editor. Okay, so I'm going to change it to animation graph editor. As you can see, we are looking at our objects here. If I zoom in on this one, and they're represented as a function curve. You see it? All right. So let me select the red one here. So we're looking at the red one. Okay, and it looks exactly the same. So when we play this, as you can see, our animation is they're slow to when they start moving, and then they slow down before they reach the end, because this represents slow curve right here. To do the opposite, it'll go faster, of course. But let's look at our interpolation first. Okay, so I'm going to stop my animation. So we have two keyframes, one on one, right here. So if I drag a rectangle here, I select that keyframe. And if I select here, I drag the front keyframe on 24. Each of these would have a handle. You see this handle right here? I don't know if you work with Illustrator or any vector program, they would have Bezier handles similar to this. Okay, what you do when you grab one handle is that when you press G, let me turn on my screencast on and off again. When you press G right here, you can then move that function curve to change the behavior. Okay, but we're not going to do that yet. We're just going to look at interpolation. So I'm going to start here at the beginning. Okay, so if I right click here, you will see an interpolation mode, and we have three interpolation in Blender. We have constant, linear, and Bezier. Bezier is the default one. This is what you get, the slow start, slow stop. Okay, so let's change this to Bezier. Actually, let's leave the red to Bezier. Let's work on this too so you can see the difference. I'm going to be on the green one. I'm going to select just this one. Right click it, interpolation. I'm going to change it to linear. Notice that the line is now, slanted line, but it's straight. Okay, see the difference when I play this. All right, so linear, it made this green to travel from left to right at exact same speed, linear speed. Okay, all right, so let's change the third one here to constant. Change the interpolation mode to constant. So you can see it's like a step up. It's like there's nothing, and then all of a sudden jump in there. So this is what this is what I actually use when I animate, because I'm still animate like as if I'm stop motion animating. So I don't want any interpretation where it goes. I want to work on my stuff pretty much step by step. So let's play all three. All right, see the difference? It doesn't even travel. It's just that, hey, stay there for one until you hit 24, and then you move to the next one. So it's like an instant jump. Okay, so we have three interpolation here. The very top one, the red, is Bezier. Green is linear. Blue is constant. And by simply changing the interpolation, you get a different look for your animation, okay? Or different movement, not look, sorry. So constant's used for mechanical stuff where you don't want a whole lot of play, you just want something that just moves left and right in a constant speed. All right, so that's basically your interpolation, okay? So what about function curves? How do we kind of change those function curves so that they behave differently, okay? So first things first is I'm going to go back to frame 1 here. And then let's change back the interpolation back to Bezier, right? So we can kind of have a similar kind of result for each one. So they all kind of move the same. Back to Bezier. And let's play. Okay. All right. So they're all playing the same now. Let's keep the first one as default, okay? Let's do the next one right here. So what we want here is that we want to be able to change the curve the way it's positioned, all right? So right now it's on slow and slow. We want to move it to fast. Since we don't have any animation before 1 and any animation before 24, they kind of, when you select a keyframe and select its handle right here, okay, press G to move it, it's kind of broken. You see it? It doesn't do really a seesaw because there's no animation past this one. The same thing with this. You can't possibly control that, okay, because there's no animation in there, okay? So in order to change how your handle kind of behaves is that you can right click it, okay, and then you can change the handle type, okay? So if you click on free, you then can break your handle, but it's already kind of broken because there's nothing in there. But if you wanted to kind of do a seesaw where you whatever you do with one, it does it on both. You can do automatic. As you can see, it does the seesaw. Okay, so but that's not important at this point, which we want to just kind of change the trajectory and reverse it. So just check them all the same. So you can see the function curve is still the same. I'm going to go to this one and change my function curve. So it's on slow. I'm going to change it to fast. So I'm going to select this handle by clicking it. I'm going to press G as in grab or move tool. Okay, and then move it up. So you can see I kind of reverse it from that one to this. So now let's see the movement. All right, it made a big difference. So it from the top, the green, so the red and the blue, they have a slow one. I switch the green one to fast. So you can see it takes off at the beginning. Okay, and then it kind of slows down as it kind of hits the ending. Okay, I'm going to stop the animation. Let's go here. I'm going to go to the blue one. So instead of making it fast at the beginning, because it's slow, right? So slow end, I'm going to go fast end on the blue one. So select the handle, press G. All right, right there, and then let's hit play. All right. And it kind of slows at the beginning, and then it just accelerates. Okay. This is an optical illusion here because it's one of those things where you ask someone which one reached the end first. But we know we animated this from 1 to 24. They all reach the same ending right there. Now unless I go bump this outside 24 and create like a little bubble right there. So they're all kind of happening at the same time. So that's the difference between changing the interpolation and changing function curves. It changes the way the object behaves from keyframe to keyframe. Okay, and this is interpolation and function curve.